NSFAS board chairperson Ernest Khosa has taken leave of absence. He says this will allow for an inquiry into the recordings that were released by OUTA implicating him in wrongdoing. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse is accusing Khosa and the Higher Education Minister Nzimande of defrauding NSFAS through kickbacks from service providers. NSFAS placing emphasis that Khosa's leave of absence should not be seen as an admission of guilt. Well, let's get some context now, and we're joined by the Executive Director at Accountability Now, Advocate Paul Hoffman. Advocate Hoffman, thank you very much for your time and patience. Let's begin the conversation with that emphasis by NSFAS, saying that this leave of absence should not be seen as an admission of guilt. Is it a right decision, though, being taken by the board chairperson?
Yes, I think that one can say that he has voluntarily put himself on some gardening leave in order to allow the dust around the OUTA investigation to settle. They call it a precautionary suspension, which is what he was facing if he did not put in for garden leave and if he had not been given garden leave by the board of NSFAS. That doesn't indicate guilt. It indicates an attempt to preserve the integrity of the institution such as it is. There's been trouble with NSFAS for a very long time. They are complete strangers to accountability. The four service providers, some of whom appear to have been involved in shenanigans that benefited the Communist Party, if not the Minister of Higher Education, were all unnecessarily appointed because the staff of NSFAS is meant to be dishing out the grants to students who are unable to afford their accommodation, their food and their fees. And subcontracting it out was initially done irregularly and illegally, and ought not to have been done. What they ought to have done was to clean up their own act. It's not their job to find other people to do their work. It's their job to do their work, and that is where the basic flaw in the system happens. Yeah. But the juicy part of the story is that OUTA's investigation is now the basis of the criminal charges that have been laid by the DA and by Action South Africa, two of the opposition political parties. So the ball is now in the court of the Hawks and the NPA. And we must just hope that it has not been sent to them to die of unnatural causes, but that they will give attention to the docket that has already been prepared by OUTA, supplemented with documentation that they are able to get access to, which OUTA is not able to get access to. And if the investigation as supplemented indicates criminal activity, kickbacks, bribes, then we should expect a criminal prosecution in short order. Yeah. Both the Hawks and the NPA are under a constitutional duty to deal with matters of this nature diligently and without delay. And really, in a case like this, where angry students are going to start burning down universities if they don't get the grants that they've been anticipating, it is a matter for fast-tracking.
Well, that element that you've just brought up now of the students who will likely take to the streets if matters are not solved soon at NSFAS, that does appear to be a very imminent threat, as one of the former student protest leaders indicated on the station a few days ago. But let's go back to what you have just said. I want to latch on to your description of NSFAS as being complete strangers to accountability. There's a history here, Advocate Hoffman, but tied to that, it has to do with a solid leadership that is needed at NSFAS, particularly at a crucial time like this? It's the beginning of a new academic year. What needs to be done to ensure that there is a solid leadership at the helm of this institution?
It's back to the implementation of Section 195(1) of the Constitution. An institution like this one is meant to be using resources effectively, efficiently, and economically, with accountability, with proper human resource management processes in place, in a manner that benefits the public. What has happened with this institution and many others on the watch of the current government is that they have become sites of cadre deployment where incompetent and unsuitable people are deployed in order to get fat on the taxpayers' money and who have no clue as to how to do their job or how to do it honestly. And now that it looks like we are getting, or possibly getting, to the end of days, there is a feeding frenzy going on among people who know that they will not be able to survive a change in government and a competency test for the continuation of their employment in the public service.
Whether the case against Minister Blade Nzimande, because that's the other person who is accused here, alongside the NSFAS board chairperson, whether that case against him is proven or not, Advocate Hoffman, if we are to give a scorecard to Minister Blade Nzimande, particularly the handling of matters at NSFAS, this is an institution or an agency, if you like, that exists within the fold of his department. Has he really done a good job of trying to ensure stability here, or is it a complete failure?
I'm afraid that if you simply do a tick box exercise down the subsections of Section 195(1) of the Constitution, you will see that ethics, accountability, transparency, proper human resource management practices, and accountability in particular are simply absent in that institution. People waft in and waft out. Some get charged, others get fired, others have outside institutions do their work for them, and it is a general omni-shambles of a kind that one can expect when the criteria for deploying cadres there, rather than the criteria of the values and principles of the Constitution, are the guiding light, which is what Blade Nzimande has been doing all the years. He is one of those deployed cadres himself, and he seeks hegemonic control of all the levers of power in society in accordance with the tenets of the National Democratic Revolution, which is the guiding light of the alliance of which he is part. He fails, he gets a G if a Z is not available.
The Democratic Alliance, as we conclude our conversation, taking aim at the man who is boss to Minister Blade Nzimande, President Cyril Ramaphosa. They've called him a coward and saying that instead of taking action here, taking leadership based on what has gone on, in all likelihood, he will outsource that responsibility to lead. How credible are those arguments by the DA against the president?
Well, if one looks at the Constitution, you will see that the Cabinet has collective responsibility, and that the members of the Cabinet, including Blade Nzimande, serve in that Cabinet at the pleasure of the President. ANC internal devices notwithstanding, constitutionally speaking, the President has the right to hire and fire Cabinet ministers within his own discretion. And the only limit on that is that he ought to act rationally, for a legitimate purpose of government when he hires and fires. But far too many people in the cabinet are not legitimate deployees of the president. The internal factionalism of the ANC determines who is and who is not a cabinet minister. Merit and suitability for appointment as a cabinet minister has never been further from the truth than it is now. If our president were able to bring his attention to bear on this particular series of shenanigans, he ought to call for or actually axe his minister, and he hasn't done that.
Director at Accountability Now is Paul Hoffman. Thank you very much, Advocate, for your time and analysis here.